many of our churches now disaffiliated from the UMC. And my question is, for those churches who disaffiliated before the General Conference, do they have the right to be given a share of the properties of the church or any asset of the church? Because there are already problems that breach even the
court. Are you
court.
talking of here in the Philippines? Or?
Yeah, in the Philippines.
Truly, those who have seceded from the United Methodist Church don't have any right to the properties owned by the United Methodist Church. However, it's more complicated than just saying it as it is. We are trying to prevent cases to be filed in court. So we are trying to somehow do a compromise wherein hopefully we can share the property instead of filing cases in court, which would take so much time, energy, and cost. So right now, those who have left the United Methodist Church in the Philippines, we are, if you are listening right now, we continue to appeal to them to be at least recognize that this property to the United Methodist Church. There are at least 2 cases in the Manila Episcopal area that we have already taken legal steps to reclaim our properties. But just like our experience when the AIMP seceded from the United Methodist Church.
Here's another question. If regionalization is approved, will the Book of Discipline crafted separately by each region is still be subjected to be approved or revised or amended by a higher body?
Yeah, if we become a regional conference, then we have the authority to, as mentioned in the petition, to draft our own rules, Book of Discipline, and others by the regional conference. It is no longer the property of the General Conference, right, Judy? The regional conference has the authority to imprimatur the rules of the church. Just like the Central Conference, ganun. Yung mga rules natin, sa atin lang yun.
Okay. I think this is a follow-up to that question. If regionalization will be approved in the General Conference, we still need to ratify this in our annual conferences. How does this work? What are the plans of the bishops? Para pala sa inyo to eh. What are the plans of the bishops to fulfill this need?
Yeah, that's very good question, because in the past, it was approved by the General Conference, but when it comes to ratification of all annual conferences, it failed. So, what's the plan? I have no plan. My bishops plan that in advance. Bishop Painit, Bishop Prodel, Bishop Rubinel. Ayan. Paano daw natin ma-assure yung pagpasa ng yung ratification ng mga constitutional amendments? Ito po ang obispo ng Davao Episcopal Area.
Good morning. Before answering that particular question, I would just like to add a previous question of about do we have the right to own property? Because this is our situation in the Davao Episcopal area now. We have a situation in the Western Visayas. I know you are listening now. We have a situation in the Western Visayas. You are claiming the property of the United Methodist Church because you said it's not united. Use your logical minds. The United Methodist Church came in 1968 and the properties were donated before 1968. Of course, there is no United Methodist Church there. But it's owned by the conference. If you want to ask this property, bring it to the conference, as what the Bishop Sir Jaco Francisco said. Again, we don't need to fight this in the court. But please, if we are really thinking that we are all Christians, think about, if you want to secede from the United Methodist Church, don't take with you your properties. That's very simple. This is not ours. This is by the church. That is my answer to that, because we have a situation. They changed the name. They just seceded it this year, but they celebrated more than many years. I don't know why. Anyway, that's my answer to that, because we have this situation in my area. Now, to the last one, I think, because we are new to the Episcopal office, I think we will be guided by the General Conference. So the plans will be after the General Conference. Although we have this, for the information of everybody, we are preparing for a team, a transition team. I think the two bishops will agree with this early announcement. So we have prepared a team to do that. But of course, we will be amenable to the guidance of the General Conference, because after the General Conference in 2024, this is crucial. So we'll be laying down the frameworks and how we reshape, how we reframe, how we restructure our church. And we don't want to give initial steps, but except to abide the guidance and the instructions of the General Conference. But what we can assure you, we will craft the book of discipline based on our context and needs. Thank you.
I just want to mention about what was transpired during our forum in NACS UMC. Nabanggit ni CJ Puno na ang problema natin dito sa Pilipinas, this is not yet the answer of the last question. Gusto ko lang, ayaw ko lang mapalipas ito. Ang problema natin dito sa Pilipinas ay hindi same-sex marriage. Dahil bawal ito sa batas. Napakalinaw po yung binanggit ni CJ. Ang problema natin ay kung paano tayo magpadami ng miyembro, kung paano tayo mag-expand ng mission dito sa Philippine Central Conference, dahil according to statistics ay umuunti-unti tayo. Ganon din yung context ng Baguio Episcopal area, particularly in Metro Santiago District. We still have pending cases in court, though some of those cases were dismissed already, but there are still pending in court. Pero ito yung ayaw ni CJ na mangyari, yung kunting problema lang sa properties ay doon natin isi-settle sa korte at napakatagal. At ang aking interpretation sa assessment, my assessment to that forum was hanggat maaari iwasan natin itong mga court litigations, mag-unify ang Philippine Central Conference, mag-usap tayo, mag-decide tayo, whatever will happen sa 2024 General Conference, mag-desisyon tayo as Central Conference. Walang mauuna, mag-decide tayong pare-pareho. Itong last question, I am not a proponent of regionalization. Ang aming napagkasunduan ay pag-isahin ang Philippine Central Conference, tungo sa autonomia using the provisions of the Book of Discipline. Kapag hindi natin sundin ito, palagay ko, you will not get the support of the three incumbent bishops. We are behind all efforts na mag-unify ang Philippine Central Conference at makagawa ng libro o disiplina na naaangkop sa ating iglesia para sa mission at evangelization ng ating community. Yun lamang po.
And salamat po sa aking dalawang kasama. I just would like to qualify what Bishop Rodel has said. The College of Bishops, the Philippine Central Conference College of Bishops, are committed to preserve the unity of the church at whatever cost. Okay? So what he stated about the plan for autonomy is that may be the final thing that we have to do. But before we reach that, we are committed, the three of us are committed to support the worldwide regionalization. Why? Because this is the first step toward being autonomous. For the first time, the General Church, the U.S. Church, listened to the central conferences, and that's us. Imagine, si Bishop Nakpil, in 1990s, meron na siyang ganung vision, pero hindi kinakagat ng U.S. Church. So with this regionalization, as presented to us, we will be equal with the powerful jurisdictions of the U.S. O ayaw niyo po ba nun? Kapantay natin ang U.S. jurisdictions. And we will be one regional Philippine Regional Conference. So, am I saying that right? We are committed to support the regionalization, especially when this proposal, the petition, passed the General Conference and it goes to the annual conferences for ratification. There is always a danger that when it comes to the annual conferences, the petitions are voted down because this entails amendments to our Constitution. So, that's why you, delegates of the General Conference representing your annual conferences, we appeal to you. No, don't just attend the General Conference when you come back. You are our partners in promoting and campaigning for the ratification, especially if this passed in the General Conference, which I guess it would. It has greater chances of passing. So we count on you to help us in the ratification of this when the petitions are presented to our annual conferences. I'm not sure if that would be in 2024 annual conferences or in 2025, but whenever that petitions will come to us, I hope we will support this approved petition on worldwide regionalization. Salamat po.
Do we have a proposed legal definition of a regional conference as differentiated from the central conference? The question, is regionalization territorial, nationality, or could the Philippine Regional Conference include Filipino UMCs or communities even in the US or other countries?
I'm not thinking of legal definition because the Book of Discipline is very clear on these matters. We just replace central conference to regional conference, jurisdictional, or but just regional. But the concept of region here is more of geographical. Say, for example, Philippine Central Conference is one region. So that is Philippine Regional Conference. Ganun po yung ano yan. That's my understanding. Unless expert of the law would like to say something, it's okay. All right, so that's it. So before we end this conversation, I'd like to ask Judy, one of the hardest working executive director of Connectional Table, who served as part of the team writing this legislation. Judy, take it away.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a few things that I wasn't sure that I did hear in the questions and in the and in what we've talked about. First of all, there are multiple pieces of legislation dealing with regionalization before the General Conference. What we talked about today is what has been prepared and submitted by the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters. And we're hoping it is the one that is considered by the full body. But there will be others considered in Conferences Committee. And one of the advantages of the Standing Committee's proposal is we are hoping it will come as one piece for all of the General Conference to consider coming out of the Standing Committee. That has not been decided for sure, but that is the hope, that it would come that way. And that's an advantage because it's an advantage for the legislation because you are considering it all at once and all of the parts are together. Just a reminder that in the original U.S. as a regional conference legislation, which is part of this legislation, but is also proposed separately because it was proposed in the 2020 ADCA, that there is a two-step process in the U.S. And one of the petitions that Bishop Francisco has alluded to was creating that U.S. interim committee, which would operate as in place of the regional conference until the amendments would be approved. So that committee would be able to function immediately following the passage of this legislation, and if by some chance, because I have this question asked a lot, what happens if the amendments don't pass? That committee would still be functioning because it would be part of the legislation. So that would be one way that the U.S. would begin to deal with some of its own specific legislation that would not have to, but it would still have to come back to the General Conference, but wouldn't necessarily have to begin at the General Conference. When the committee looked at this and has discussed, and I know in all of the earlier legislations, they discussed various things being included, and some of it, for simplicity's sake, has not been included. That includes whether jurisdictions would be considered throughout all of the regions, or whether jurisdictions would be eliminated from the U.S. That is not part of this legislation. It is part of the suggestions of things that the committee in Petition 8 might look at. But what is also not included are anything dealing with election or tenure of bishops. That would remain something that still would be worked out in the future. And also, there were several questions about apportionments that is also not addressed in this legislation. But what is included would be the ability to produce hymnals that would include marriage and funeral rites that are in line with the laws and customs of each region. So each region's book of discipline adaptations would be able to include those specific points. And one region would not bind another region. So the Philippines' definitions and procedures of how they would like to do cultural weddings and funerals would be their own. The requirements for ordination would be determined by annual conferences, as they are now, still by the boards of ordained ministries in those annual conferences. And these petitions also would allow for each region to make changes in the chargeable offenses and in the penalties, and that's significant. Primarily, this legislation would also involve only dealing with U.S. Specific legislation at the regional level. And from when I've talked to many groups, that's been one of the really significant things because our financial property matters, pension matters, some boycotts and things that really don't hold for the entire church would be dealt with in the region. And this should shorten General Conference, but also, more importantly, make it able to deal with the mission and ministry of the entire church and enable us to focus on making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So just, if you have any other questions, if you'd like me to answer, catch me. I'll be here all day.
Thank you.